Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, and welcome to We Gals
No Problems!
We seriously don't have any problems.
Yes, actually behind the scenes on We Lads Big Problems, we were all solving the problems that the lads have been complaining about, so now we're just here to have
There's
some
no
fun.
problems left.
Yeah, so we're just here to have a good time.
Tell some jokes.
Yeah.
Talk
Tell
about girl
some
bosses.
stories.
We are so excited to be with you guys today. The general topic of our little podcast episode as We Gals is talking about our favorite, empowering, cool, sexy, fun, wonderful women in our lives.
Or otherwise known as girl bosses.
Girl boss!
International Girl Boss Day, of
International
course.
Girl Boss Day, exactly. And this episode is in honor of International Women's Day, and we're so excited to be here. Doing a 500 times better job than Evan and Ryan.
So much to
this
think
podcast.
because we solved all the problems.
We solved them all.
Yeah.
That is exactly right.
And in the spirit of International Women's Day, I do be having some jokes.
She do be having some
I
jokes
do
to
be
share
having
with
some
you all.
jokes that are very on topic
Yes.
because, as we all know, girls just want to have pun.
Okay.
We're off to a great start here.
Thanks for listening, guys. Bye.
Now,
Yes.
I have to warn you guys that I spent like the last hour looking up jokes to do with women, and a lot of them
Happen to be a little bit sexist.
surprisingly, a lot of them were sexist. But I kind of skimmed through the bad ones.
Sure.
I'm just gonna roll with it a little bit. So that said, my first joke is, girls. Today is International Women's Day. It was supposed to be on Monday, but they took too long to get ready.
Sadly accurate to me.
Sorry, guys.
Am I right, boys?
Relatable content.
Women.
Can't beat them.
Okay, so do we talk about girl boss now?
I think it's time to talk about girl boss.
Okay.
And we're starting off with
Me.
Ellen Kenny.
Hi, I'm Ellen Kenny. And so, as the Irish person in the group, I decided it was very important to talk about these singular. There's not enough Irish representation in Irish media, and I am here to change that. So, and of course, for the girl boss I chose, since we're all Trinity students, I thought I would choose someone very close to our hearts, especially ladies. This woman actually did PPS. She is one of us. She is quirky. So
She's not like other girls.
She is not like other girls.
she's a big nerd.
So I'm doing Lynn Ruane. She is the current senator for Trinity, and she is the past president of the Trinity Student Union.
Legend.
So I just picked her because I just love how her entire basic career is built around like access to education and talking about the intersectionalities between, say, like gender, class, and how that can affect how the kind of education you end up receiving. So Lynn came from a working class family in Tala, and while she always felt supported by her family, like very early on in her education, she did notice the effects that a lack of support can have on the child. So like I went to a talk with her a few weeks ago with the Politics Society, and she talked a lot about how once, like, how can you expect a child who comes from a family really afflicted with like abuse and drug addiction to then be able to sit down in a classroom and like just give a shit at all? Like, it takes so much like just to get out of bed when you come from a more rough background. So like a lot to then expect them to be able to like just commit any effort when their only real goal is just like to survive. And she did also have a lot of issues with basically just the entire framework of the education system, since it's so much focused on like rote learning and memorizing stuff rather than actually just simply asking questions. She got in a lot of trouble just for asking questions sometimes. And it was even one time when she read what Pádraig Pearse said about the education system being the murder machine of creativity, she really related to that, and that's something she had thought from a really young age. And like she was always noticing like these inequalities in education, like from this young age, but she just didn't have like the means to express it yet or explain it. And she ended up actually leaving school at 15 when she had a child. So she ended up then taking a very unique road of education to end up as the current senator for Trinity. So like I think
Spoiler alert.
I think a really important thing for her was like accessibility to education, because that's how she got to where she is. Because after she had her daughter, she decided she wanted to learn more about addiction, because she is certain that had it not been for her daughter, she would have become an addict herself, because she was just surrounded by that in her community. So she wanted to be able to like learn more about it from this kind of outsider's perspective, but on the inside, to be able to like help them and like just sort of make a difference. And then she was able to do that thanks to this education centre called Uncosson that former Minister Catherine Zapone set up. And it actually offered free childcare support, so she was able to go to her classes and know her child was being taken care of. And it was that perfect balance between like work and home life that let her get the education. And then she went on then to do like loads of different courses in addiction, all the while like being like a single mother and just working more and more with addiction and helping people. And at one point she did realise that like there were so many issues with addiction, class and social mobility, because she could see them like right in her community, like right at her front door. But she didn't actually have any way to like explain it properly or like be able to like get involved with the people she thought could make a difference at a wider level. So then she decided to to start going down the more traditional route of education and go to college, and she was able to do that with the Trinity Access Programme. She was able to get in. Yes.
Amazing.
Yes. And then she entered college as a mature student doing PPS. Absolute legend. She picked wisely. And then that course did give her like loads like more chances to be able to like just like I was saying, explain like all the different things that she's been seeing her entire life. Like she was saying there was one thing when she first learned about, I know we always talk about how like sociology explains everything we know, but
putting
like,
labels on the things we already know exist.
Yeah. I know like we always joke about that, but then she's talked a lot about how like empowering it was to have like basically all of her feelings and like problems validated by like all these like old men in desk chairs writing about it. Like she was able to have like the both perspectives. Like she was talking one point where she told her mum she wanted to be a vet, and the mother was just like, oh, that's really nice, you can like try your best there. Whereas if she had come from a more affluent background, if she had told her mother she wanted to be a vet, that mother would definitely know someone who could get her work experience, get her grind, so she could get the massive amount of points that she would need for it. So a big thing for her is social capital and that kind of thing, not just the wealth. Like it's also about like who you know, and that comes from the background you're in. We all know this in sociology. And when she was in Trinity, she continued working like with addiction services. She got involved with St. Vincent de Paul, helping homeless people in Dublin. And she was representative for students with parents, and through that she was just encouraged to go for president of the student union. And she just went on it as like basically a fluke. She thought like it would like look good on her CV, like would be like a good like challenge for her, and then she ended up getting it, like winning amazingly.
As she should.
Yes, and she just really transformed like the Irish Student Union into this big like basically platform for activism, and like make both like on a public level and also like locally, just making sure students are represented. And she did a lot for basic campaigning for the 8th Amendment. This was all a couple of years ago, like just when there was like talk of there being a referendum. She was a massive proponent of that. She also talked a lot about oil divestment and climate change, and she was able to do all this by being president. She was able to do this. And then as well as all this, she was also running for, she decided she would run for senator. She would go for the Senate as the Trinity representative. So she's juggling a lot of the things right now.
Yeah.
So you would think she is a dull woman, but don't
but
worry.
Wait,
but
there's more.
The results may surprise you. Basically,
women can be fun. Women can be fun.
Women can be fun and two-dimensional.
Dead right.
Two-dimensional?
Yeah.
What?
Wow.
Only 2 dimensions. Sorry, guys.
No more, no less.
Basically, in 2015, she went to the wedding of Catherine Zapone and Anne Gilligan right after the same-sex marriage referendum, and she said she remembers going to Dublin Castle feeling very fancy, and then she got a bit drunk, and the next thing she remembers is being on campus in the flat that she lived on campus at the time, pissing outside her front door.
Only girl bosses pee on Trinity campus.
It turns out, and then she remembered later on that she was sleepwalking on campus, and she somehow ended up back right outside her flat, and it was like the peeing that woke her up. But she had no way to get back to her flat.
Oh, no.
So then she had to like call over like the security guards and be like, oh sorry, I thought I heard like a knock at my door, so I went outside to check, but I locked myself out. Can you please help me? Because she was still a bit drunk at the time. So, and on top of all this was right after she had announced that she was running for the Senate. So there was like a loads of like coverage of her at the time because it was like, who is this working class mature student that's now going for the Shannon? What could she be up to? So she fully thought like her career was going to be over like before it started. But luckily, you can be fun and a political queen, and she did manage, like, I think she did win then the Shannon, beating like a few different like incumbents, like managed like take their seats basically. And then she carried on like all her activism and everything in the Shannon. She did loads for the 8th Amendment at the time because like she became senator right as again the referendum was just happening, so she did a lot of research with that, like a lot of consultations on that.
Yes.
And then she, of course, like one of her main things was now that she was in this really like prestigious world of like politics and like seeing everything right in front of her, she was very conscious to remember where she came from, and not just like discuss the theory of everything, but also like remember who the policies are for. So she basically, I think one senator literally told her, remember, like, you have to keep one foot on the ground, like looking, and like also like looking up at the sky basically. So that was big. So then that was again another big thing. She was always very focused on education, making sure that people had access to it, and she set up loads of different initiatives like for free maths grinds for Leaving Cert students in her community. She set up something called Philosophy in the Community, which is basically basically teaching people like in communities like philosophy, so like morality, just like nice ways to live your life, just getting people more into it from an earlier age, so it's not this really like glass ceiling that only a certain kind of people can get into. And I think I really just admire Lynn because she just like unapologetically calls out all the inequality in Ireland that you just see in every like facet of society. And I think because she is just a woman from a working class background and had a very unique journey to end up where she is, she has a very like interesting perspective on everything, and that is actually something that she kind of gets a lot of slack for. Like she's always like, I remember at this talk I went to a few weeks ago with her, she was talking about how she's always been like advised, quote unquote, to maybe like calm down when she's talking about these like big political issues.
I wonder why that might be.
There's just just like some kind men giving her some solid advice on how to
that they would totally give to her male counterparts.
Just leaning into the males. But then I think one thing that she said that really stuck with me at the talk was, like, how can you expect people yelling from the gutter to not be angry, and how can you expect you have to be civil in these kind of discussions where she knows like people in her daily life that are suffering, and when all these like men in suits and people in like the upper echelons of the country are just like discussing like, oh, but like, can we afford to more like drug programs in working class communities, or can we afford to give more people grants for college? She's just thinking of like all the different people that these kind of policies would help, and like she can name them on a list. So I just think it's I think she definitely just adds like a lot to like the political landscape of Ireland. Definitely a perspective that's very much needed.
Lynn Ruane, girl boss extraordinaire.
Girl boss confirmed.
Confirmed.
Yeah, no, she sounds
more
great.
like Lynn Ruane.
We have two puns in already. I'm so sorry to everyone listening.
I'm never sorry.
Real girl bosses make puns.
Yes.
Sorry.
Oh,
sorry, Lila.
I have to resign from my position.
Hand over your feminist card.
Actually, speaking of girl bosses, Ellen, am I correct in saying you're a big fan of pasta?
I am indeed. Thank you for noticing.
Well, you're in luck.
Okay. I'm so excited for this. Oh my god.
Ellen, what do you call a fake noodle?
I already know the answer, but tell me.
An impasta!
Thank you so much. I feel so enlightened.
Anytime.
We like to split up the serious bits with really bad jokes.
What's the most feminist pasta?
Ooh.
Discuss. It's a valid question. What's the most
I want to go with
pasta?
bow tie.
Oh.
Interesting. I would say that's the most misogynist because it's a bow tie.
Well, yeah, but
Men
what
in
about how
suits,
cool it is
TM.
when chicks wear bow ties?
Oh, that's so true.
There you go.
You know what?
I feel like for reclamatory purposes, penne is a good move here.
Hashtag reclaim penne.
Reclaim the penne pasta 2021. I've said it once, I'll say it again. Alright, ladies. If you don't mind, Ellen, I'm going to launch into my girl boss.
No more pasta for us.
Please.
No pasta, only girl boss. Alright, I'm going to be talking about a phenomenal Turkish woman, legend, icon, sociologist, relevant to our course material, current political science student, Pinar Selek, who is from Istanbul, Turkey. I love this woman because she is like the most holistic girl boss of all time, social justice warrior, legend, queen. And my like vague connection to her is that she attended the high school that was linked to my elementary school in Turkey. So it was like the continuation of this French school that has like an elementary school and then a middle school and then high school in Turkey.
So you're basically related.
You're related,
She
yeah.
is my older sister. But yeah, so she was born in Istanbul, which is, oh my gosh, guys, I was born there too. That's crazy.
Oh, wow.
What a small world. I'm telling you, like, I know her personally. But anyways, so Pinar Selek is really cool because she's well known in Turkey for her work with specifically vulnerable communities, and that includes like people that are homeless, children, mothers, minorities, and Kurdish communities as well, which I think is a topic that we touched on a lot in our episode last week, if you want to go check that out.
Very good episode, the best episode.
Oh, thank you, Lila. You're too kind.
Hey,
But,
wait, what? Best what?
I'm throwing us under the bus, Olivia.
So Pinar is also an author of several books that she's talked about minorities and what being a woman looks like and how the military relates to manhood, and there are just like a variety of fascinating topics that she's written about over the course of her lifetime, and she's published them in multiple languages including English, Turkish, German, and French, and she has founded a Turkish feminist journal called Amargi, which is now based in France because of her exile from Turkey, which I will launch into very,
Are you
very
saying
soon.
Why am I not surprised?
Sorry, are you
Yeah.
saying that the media in Turkey is bad?
Dot, dot, dot.
Find out on We Lads last week.
Episode, where we talk about, you guessed it, media in Turkey. Pinar's kind of like life journey as a social justice warrior and somebody that actively speaks up for minorities is really, really interesting. It kind of starts in 1998 when she was in what I want to say is her her late 20s. There we go. I can do math. Who would have thought?
Woman in STEM.
Woman in STEM, exactly. So, in 1998 in Turkey, there was an explosion in the Spice Bazaar, which was in central Istanbul, and it left 7 people dead, and there were around 120 people that were injured. A small group of people were arrested soon after, one of them being Pinar herself, and there was a strong review of evidence and testimonies that happened surrounding her involvement with the situation. And this was mainly because they thought she was involved with the Kurdish Workers' Party and that the incident was tied back to a possible attack on civilians that was led by the PKK, which is the Kurdish Workers' Party. And later on, after they kind of reviewed the evidence, they realized that the people that testified for Pinar's involvement within the incident was actually a direct extraction based on torture, and basically none of that was admissible later on in court. So 2.5 years later, even though the 7 people that were involved were jailed, all of them were freed later on, and they realized that the blast itself that was in the bazaar had actually been caused by a gas canisters leaking and setting on fire within the bazaar. So it was kind of this really unfair situation that ended up happening towards her, and she was pinpointed because she was already a very vocal feminist who talked a lot about minority rights within Turkey and who had been writing a lot within the scope of journalism and working on her own books, and all of this was just kind of pinpointed towards her after she had done a lot of this work that was already relatively controversial within the country. So later on, once she had been released, the prosecution actually challenged the decision because there was kind of this active chase against her, this just regular incrimination against this woman who was literally just trying to do her best. And then they reopened the trial in 2005, and once again they were like, okay, wait, there's not enough evidence. The guy who literally said she was guilty was tortured, and then later was like, actually, psych. JK. Yeah, and so she was acquitted, and then in the decision they opened it again in 2009, and so this just kind of kept on happening year after year. And it happened for the 3rd time in 2011. The prosecution was so hell-bent on getting her convicted that they put the case back in court at the end of 2012.
Oh my God.
And so basically, they said that she had been sentenced to life imprisonment in Turkey. the thing was, at this point, she had actually already left Turkey because she wanted to go study for a PhD in France, because she was like, I'm a girl boss, I want another degree because I'm a legend. And so basically what happened was that she wasn't there, she was tried in absentia, and then what happened was that there was an arrest warrant that was internationally issued, and she appealed against it and was acquitted for the 4th time in December 2014. And then they basically were just kind of stuck in this whole mesh of contradictions between the prosecution and this whole genuine explanation of just something exploding in a bazaar.
It's crazy that by this point they know what caused it. It's just a leaky gas canister.
Exactly.
And yet they're still like,
Now they're just like, I don't like the cut.
I don't like her.
I don't like the cut of her jib. Lock her away.
That is quite literally what happened. In those exact words.
They said,
Exactly.
The prosecutor did say, I don't like the cut of her jib.
the famous Turkish phrase.
We say it all the time. In the morning, at lunch, at dinner. So the thing is, like, all through all of this happening to her, she was kind of put into court, questioned based on her identity, her ideology, her general beliefs, basically the majority of her life choices. And this was obviously a really isolating experience for her. But the reason why I've chosen her as my girl boss is because she's so resilient. Like, when people have interviewed her, that I have a quote here that basically she says when she was talking after being in and out of jail for basically 15 years. She said, "It's so hard to express what I feel about this scandalous legal situation. It's like asking a woman how she feels after she was subjected to violence. But I can tell you how I remain standing after 15 years. There's incredible solidarity with me." And the thing that Pinar did is that she set up her own communities across the world. Like, she created a lot of independent sources and journalist organizations and found like-minded people. And although Turkey might have a really infamous reputation with media, there are a lot of these independent communities. Like, for one, I can directly attest to the fact that my aunt is on like an independent radio show called Açık Radio, which is like it's based in Istanbul, and there are people all around the world. Like, she's a huge biker, so she goes once a week and talks about bikes for an hour. And so
Another girl boss.
my aunt, so it's really special because there are these communities that have just kind of formed almost as like a reclamatory act of community for women. When people are subjecting individual women to violence, it kind of is this bonding experience, and you learn so much from that. Even though you've been subjected to violence, she kind of takes it as this like learning opportunity, community building opportunity, educational opportunity. And after she was released in 2000, that was when she set up her organization, Armaki, which is the journalist organization that's now followed her into France. And it does a lot of work combating violence against women, and it runs a feminist bookstore in Turkey and publishes articles on its website about what it means to be a woman and how feminism kind of has taken place in Turkey. And so currently she's still in exile in France, finishing up her degree, and she's still publishing books about minority issues and feminism.
Amazing.
And so the thing is, like, when we think about what it is that kind of put Pinar into her position, was that she didn't talk about people that were in the Kurdish Workers' Party during her conviction within her very, very first, like, interaction with court and kind of the allegations that were set against her. And I think that really speaks to her commitment to people that are marginalized in Turkey. And she has a really strong passion for Kurdish rights and Kurdish people in Turkey, which I personally think, based on my ideological beliefs, that's like a really strong position to take, and something that I totally agree with. And so there was significant injustice against her, and a lot of that is because she continued to be resilient regardless of what was put against her. Even when the whole world was like, stop, she was like, no, my beliefs are stronger than any of you could ever put me down for. And so after all of this kind of happened, like, karma's kind of pushing in her favor. In 2019, she won this big award called the Mediterranean Culture Prize, and it talks about intercultural dialogue, which I think is a really prominent topic in Turkey when there are so many very relevant cultural minorities with unique positions. And her quote from when she was accepting the award that I kind of have with me is, "I'm here as someone from the Mediterranean, as a woman in exile, as a writer, researcher, and activist. I strive to resist with my work, and I'm trying to contribute to the growth of a counterculture based on freedom, justice, and solidarity." So I just really think, like, her message, her vibes, her energy, her efforts, they're so good, and they really speak to what it looks like to be a woman at the face of oppression and how that can kind of work intersectionally with other things, which kind of ties perfectly
right into what I have to say.
Lila's person. Girl boss of the day.
So, I wonder who this girl boss is going to be.
Hold on a second.
But wait!
Hold on.
What's this?
What do you mean?
A brief intermission.
Ella, did you think I didn't have a little turkey joke for you?
Stop. You have a turkey joke for me?
Now, Ella, what sound does a turkey's phone make?
I don't know. What sound does it make?
Wing wing, wing wing. Also, I do want to say as well, you're an excellent storyteller because I'm genuinely on the edge of my seat. Like, what happens next? Like the
Interesting.
Fair play. Fair play. But also, wing wing,
Wing, wing, wing, wing, wing, wing.
Much to wing wing.
Much to wing, wing.
Years of feminism fighting against the patriarchy has all led to the point where Oliwia can say on air,
Wing wing.
Women fought for this. While turkeys aren't quite as good a segue, intersectionality most certainly is. My girl boss is a self-proclaimed black lesbian mother, warrior, and poet.
She is the perfect woman.
She is the perfect woman. American poet Audre Lorde. Mm-hmm. So she was born in 1934 in New York to Caribbean immigrants. And they actually settled in Harlem, which I thought was really interesting because of the Harlem Renaissance, which, for those of you that don't know, Harlem is a historic black community in Manhattan and has been a hub for American art for decades. Yeah. So she was kind of surrounded by it. Because her parents, since they were immigrants, they had to work really hard, so they were out all the time. They couldn't be home to, kind of be there for her and everything. And when they were home, they were a little distant, so she turned to reading poetry as a form of kind of communicating with herself and with other people. And she even said, I don't have the quote here, but in that her younger years, people would ask her questions, like, how was your day? And she would, like, find a poem that fit for it, or make a poem, and she spoke in poetry, like only in poetry, because she didn't have a community that was like surrounding her to teach her, how to communicate the way we usually do, which I thought was really interesting.
Got those rhymes since 34.
34, baby. And I mean, the thing that I think is the most interesting about her is that she's using her creative talent to tackle a multitude of issues. I mean, when we talk about intersectionality, it's Audre Lorde.
Yeah.
She tackled racism, sexism, classism, capitalism, which they didn't mention on Wikipedia, but I threw in there. She knew, and homophobia, because in high school, she felt like she wasn't accepted, and she described herself as crazy and queer, and which, honestly, we love to see it. She kind of... Every, group she tried to go and talk to, they automatically kicked her out because she was black, or because she was a woman, or because she was a feminist, or, and I think the main thing she tried to tackle over all of this was the problems within white feminism, which I thought was really interesting, because I was expecting, doing my research on her, for it to all be, she was attacking the patriarchy from the top down, and instead she was like, no, the real problem is white feminists that want to keep out all the women of color, which is...
Period.
Girl boss of the week. Let's see. So, she attended Columbia University for her master's degree in library science, which doesn't make her a woman in STEM.
I say yes.
I completely agree.
I say yes.
I'm hearing the word science.
I hear the word science, therefore she is a woman in STEM,
I
and
just
we love her
discovered
for
what
it.
library science is, and I'm immediately dropping out to fulfill my career in that.
No more PPEs, only libraries. I will make the prettiest library. So obviously because of this, she was meeting tons of like-minded people for the first time who were really interested in poetry and novels and writing. And so she actually began leading workshops teaching black undergrad students just everything, and especially the ones who wanted to participate in the civil rights movement, because remember, she was born in the 30s, so by the time she's a master's student, then that's going on. And so she dedicated a lot of her life to teaching other people about intersectionality besides her poetry, just like doing little workshops and creating communities, which reminds me of Pinar, is like she builds this group for herself because people kicked her out of the other ones, which I thought was really interesting. And she, let's see. Not my notes.
I do think that is really interesting, talking about like the intersectionality and how she more tackled white feminism most of all, which I think is very interesting because there probably isn't enough coverage of that, like having enough like sort of cohesion like in like among feminists and actually tackling issues that matter just all around the world, not just like ourselves like in the West. That is
right,
really cool.
exactly. Like I was watching a documentary the other week with Evan from We Lads, the real one.
We know him.
And we know him. And it was about Riot Girl.
Usurped him.
We've usurped him. We know him. He's gone. And it was about Riot Girl. We knew him. No more. And it was so obvious just how white it was, and how Western feminism is just completely dominated by white women who, think we should maybe we can allow some women of color into our movement, but we don't know, which is so frustrating and awful. Yeah. And so she tackled, the interesting thing that I found was that she tackled white feminism and then also Evan Mupp, white feminism, and then also tackled problems within the Black community itself, and how she felt like because of the patriarchy overall, that it wasn't just white men that were perpetuating it, it was also Black men and women, and she was really fighting for an end to that intergroup fighting.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think one way that she tackled the white feminism aspect, which is fun fact, she slept with white women to do it. She has
my favorite form of activism.
My favorite form of activism.
She fucked her way to equality.
Feminism! She talks a lot about eroticism, which I think is really interesting. And it's all about, one, sharing joy with physical, emotional aspects with people, but she thinks that it really is a bridging tie, sociology.
Yes.
A bridging tie, and that it lessens the threat of differences. So I lost a little poem on it, but she had a poem describing that, and there was a lot of articles about her.
Absolutely. Just
Yes,
to like
actually,
hop
I
in
remember.
here.
I think she has in her biography. It's called biomythography because of course she had to like make art about like her memoirs, and she had like a whole like section dedicated to. I just remember this to the first time she had sex with a woman, and it was just amazing the way she was talking about it. She was talking about this whole thing of like it feels like she's known this woman's body her entire life, and it's just so interesting.
I love that. Yes. Yeah, I like that a lot of her like use of terminology like eroticism and emotion and like the idea of like the dichotomy between rational and emotional being something that can be unified and doesn't have to be entirely separate. And she's almost using words like eroticism and emotion and emotionality like a reclamatory phrase.
Yes,
like I am this. I want to be this.
Yeah.
You want to be this. It's something that will empower all of us.
Right,
I feel like for a lot of people, they probably think, like, because obviously the academia we have in our heads is all very, like, cold, empirical. It's just the fact. So it feels like you can't have, like, an actual, like, subjective experiences in your activism, and you can't basically be feminine when you're talking about these kind of issues. So I just love Audre Lorde.
I know, I love her putting the spin on it like that.
Yeah.
It's the same with Pinar of just standing up and being like, no, this is who I am. This is what I believe in. And that's really what she's known for. I mean, she's known for her poetry and all that as well, but she really was just like, women are strong and dangerous, and I'm one of them, which I think is just amazing. Girl boss. All around girl boss.
Absolutely.
Something that I've noticed about like the three women we've talked about so far is the use of rage almost as like a powerful mechanism to kind of push people forward, because when you think about women, especially angry women, that often has like such a negative connotation, like why are they being angry?
They're hysterical.
Exactly. The use of crazy, the use of hysterical being one of them, and how all of the women that we've talked about are like, I'm going to twist this 180 degrees, we're turning this into a movement forward rather than backwards.
Actually, a fun fact about hysteria, the word hysteria obviously means crazy and like just absolutely mad, but the word hysteria actually comes from, I think, the Greek or the Latin word vagina. Like the word hysteria is directly attached.
The way that makes me so angry.
So you know the language is misogynist, guys. No,
Shocker. Confirmed.
Confirmed. Anti-girl boss.
Language is anti-girl boss. We speak no more in protest.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're just gonna make unintelligible noises for the last 22 minutes of this podcast.
Or we make joke.
Oh! Well, actually, seeing this, we're, being so, like, just good and talking about these serious issues and, how great women are. I want to remind everyone that women do not know how to play football. And I have a joke to demonstrate. ...
Women's World Cup question.
Are you ready?
Don't exist.
Nope.
I was wondering, me personally, I was wondering why the ball was getting bigger and bigger, and then it hit me. I also have a very fun joke about Sweden, which I'm just going to throw in with you because it's like about immigration. I can throw it in with
Why
like
not?
the three of them. Anyways,
International. Bring in a new
Sorry,
country.
I just read it.
Ellen's reading my jokes.
I hate it.
This is not allowed. What do you call someone who emigrated to Sweden?
What?
An artificial Swedener. Not enough left.
Is there any way I can turn this
was
off
perfect.
now?
Wait, sorry, I actually have one more.
This one is perfect.
no.
This one goes out to Audre Lorde.
Yes. A communist joke isn't funny. ...
Until everyone gets it.
That's the one. Okay. Anyways, let's flip communism around.
No.
And talk about Poland. This is what I'm here for. Well, that's not true. I'm here for the jokes, but thank you for actually letting me speak as well about it. No, not just using me for my raw comedy.
Women are more than that.
Yeah. Okay.
We're proving that women can be smart and funny this afternoon.
It's just
our
a
minds.
lot for the patriarchy to handle. Okay.
We should have only done one at a time, really.
I fully agree. First of
Another
all,
Week Gals episode.
Another Week Gals.
Whenever the wee lads are need a little break.
Yes.
Yes, which is
We
most
do
of the time.
weird
because
gals
men-
lesser problems.
Yes. We'll demonstrate a third personality trait.
No.
Yeah, who would have thought? Crazy.
Comment below what you want our third personality trait to be.
Drop it in the chat, guys.
Okay, before I start, Lila, would you like to pronounce this name here? The woman that I'm going to be talking about.
I'm gonna read that as Barbra. Got that right?
Yeah.
Barbra Nowacka.
So
Nowacka?
close. Further away. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about Barbra Nowacka.
There's no S in that.
Yes.
It's fine.
Who is a very, very prominent Polish politician, because as we know, my only personality trait is actually Poland.
And that you're God.
If
You have two
and
personality traits.
I do. Yeah, if you think I'm smart and funny after listening to this, that's not true. I'm just Polish and God. Anyways, so starting off, she does be the daughter of another girl boss. I know. The family has two
She
girl
said
Girl
that
boss squared.
Yes, so her mom was also a left-wing politician. She was actually in Parliament literally from 1993 to 2010, which is she basically won every election she was ever in, because Poland only started to have elections in 1991. So absolute girl boss. She was the deputy prime minister and the minister for social policy at the same time in 2004 and 2005, because why not? She actually died in the Smolensk presidential crash of 2010, which is really interesting. I kind of talk about this sometimes just like casually, because it was a really interesting like political phenomenon. As bad as that
the one
sounds,
you were telling me about?
yes, as
Oh
bad as
my
it sounds,
God.
because it was such a tragedy. But it was basically a presidential plane crashed in 2010, and so much of our government was on that plane. So basically we kind of had to start over again. Obviously we had to have like elections, and a lot of like really, really prominent politicians, including Isabella, died, which is very sad, so let's move on. Anyways, Barbra herself was born in 1975. She studied IT in college, which actually makes her a woman in STEM.
Don't drag Audre Lorde.
Just saying. Then
this.
she also got a master's degree in management, which I thought was very random. I thought it was very random because She was kind of a little bit socialist. I mean, socialist / social democratic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Queen.
She all her roots are in the Youth Labour Union, which she joined in 1997, and then by 2000 she was the joint leader of, because girl boss. And yeah, that very much concerned itself with the promotion of socialist / social democratic ideals, and it was kind of promoting those in the youth. I mean, it did a lot of fun stuff. Her role specifically was centered around making contact with the media and other like international organizations which are kind of concerned with the same thing. Then from 2001 to 2006, she represented said labour union in the Youth European Socialist Party, and she also led a little subgroup that the group had just to do with feminism. So she was very, very involved with that. Then in 2006, she founded the Party for Young Socialists. And this is where I'm not going to get too much into her political career in the early 2000s, because she was in like 7 different parties. She created some of them.
Legend.
Some of them. Some of them.
She said party buffet.
Absolutely. So I don't want to get too bogged down by that. She ran for EU Parliament in 2014, and she was evidently really cool because the former president of Poland, Aleksander Kwaśniewski, who was a big left-winger as well, was really backing her for the European Parliament. That said, she did not get it. But you know, she tried.
She was too much of a
An
girl boss
attempt was
anymore.
made.
She
I
was
think
too powerful.
I think
Yeah,
so.
exactly.
2014 was just not ready for her. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then, I guess kind of from that, you know, you fail, but you gain experience, and you know,
You get back up.
That's it. And you know, the media starts to recognise you and stuff. And basically in 2014, she became the leader of the left-wing coalition, which was a really big deal because it meant that if the left-wing coalition had won, she would be Prime Minister. And also, interestingly, so this is to like the 2015 elections. I have so much to say about 2015 elections, but girl boss wise, it was very interesting because the 3 main parties, like which was the left wing coalition, the centrist coalition, and Law and Justice, sadly, they were all led by women. So it was kind of a given that Poland would have a woman prime minister, which is pretty cool for us in 2015. Yeah, that said, the girl boss we got as prime minister was very, very right wing, and you know, kind of
Can we have
destroyed our
girl boss
democracy.
prime minister? The prime minister at home.
We have a girl boss prime minister at home.
Yeah. Also, something that's very, very sad is that Barbra actually didn't get into government at all, even though she was the leader of left-wing coalition. Despite getting 75,000 votes in Warsaw, she was well able to get a seat. But Poland does be having these electoral thresholds. I know.
Aren't you writing your essay on that?
I know some things about the electoral threshold. And basically, because the left-wing coalition as a whole didn't cross 8% of the vote nationally, none of their representatives got seats, even if they had won in their constituencies, which isn't very democratic. Find out more in my op-ed.
Your politics essay. Add to your TA.
Yes. So here's where things get a bit spicy in that I didn't fully agree with her. I know. So in 2016, she founded Poland's Initiative, which basically was kind of the same old thing where it was trying to get young people involved in politics. But where that kind of went south for me, and this is actually when I first heard of her as a politician, because, you know, I'm quite young. 2016, 2017 was when I was really, really getting into Polish politics. And basically she joined the centrist coalition with this initiative, which was really interesting because on one hand it did show that she was a very, very prominent woman in Polish politics, because her kind of joining that movement, it was very, very publicised, and it was a big deal. You know, everyone kind of knew that she could get a lot of people, you know, involved in what things were doing. But the reason why I wasn't a huge fan of it because the same year this new left-wing party was created called Spring, which is really nice because it's all about, you know, a new start and things blossom in spring. Yeah, it's very cute. And we did kind of think, I say we, just the Polish
Oliwia
population.
is the Polish left.
We kind of thought maybe, kind of her initiative could have went really, really well with that left-wing party, and maybe that would have kind of kick-started a new kind of left-wing movement. Whereas instead, she chose the approach of we need to get law and justice out of power, and if that means we have to have a centrist coalition that doesn't really achieve our goals, well then that's just kind of like a stepping stone towards greater progress, which I think is great and it's respectable in a lot of ways. I personally wasn't a huge fan of it because I did want to vote for the left-wingers, and I did. But I guess it's like an interesting thing, you kind of have to adapt to politics and anyways, she did in 2016. This is kind of funny. She won this big it was like an award thing for influential global thinkers. And on the website it actually says she got it, and I quote, for humbling Warsaw, which is a very girl boss thing to do.
Legend.
Humbling the whole of Warsaw. But
She put Warsaw in the naughty corner.
she did.
Warsaw wearing the dunce cap.
What that was in reference to is in 2016, Law and Justice started their very big anti-abortion campaign, and what they wanted to do was abortion is already illegal in Poland except for very, very specific instances, and what they wanted to also ban it for if there is I don't know how to explain it, if there's something wrong with the fetus basically. They wanted to force the woman to have the child anyways, which is obviously problematic for so many reasons. And so Barbra was one of the main gals who organised the Black Monday protests, what it was called. It was that because all the women wore in black, and it was kind of like mourning, kind of like the destruction of women's rights. That was the whole vibe, and it was actually super successful. And hundreds of thousands of women showed up. One of the main guys in government at the time said that genuinely the protest caused us to think and taught us humility, and indeed the laws voted against very soon after.
Wow.
And this would be such a cool story, how the Polish women went on the streets, fought for their rights. It could have been so beautiful if Law and Justice didn't pass that exact law at the end of last year. And it was the same thing the strikes were so much bigger at the end of last year. I actually went to a little solidarity strike here in Dublin, which is really, really fun. Got to meet some Polish people. I mean, honestly, put me in any situation where it's like a group of Polish people waving around Polish flags, and I'll be really, really happy.
I just remember that there was one evening where we're all like, yeah, we can hang out, and Olivia's like, oh, I can't make it, I'm going to a solidarity protest about Polish people, and we're like, and this was 2-3 days into knowing you, I'm like, yes,
Sounds
yes you
about
are,
right.
yes you are.
I think an interesting point I wanted to bring up here, I do this a lot where I'm like, okay, all of these bad things are happening in Poland, but I swear Polish people aren't actually that bad, and I did find a statistic to back me up on this. So there's actually only 11% of Polish people actually support this law and legalizing abortion, which you wouldn't think. I think from the media coverage, I mean, I guess that is kind of the role of the media, is to kind of dramatise things as much as possible. And I think it does very much sound as if, Poland is such a backwards, conservative country and they want to, take away women's rights. That's not exactly true. It's mostly just Law and Justice wanting to take away women's rights. Yeah. And, I mean, they're very, very affiliated with, the Catholic Church, and that definitely has a role to play in it. But Polish people as a whole, like I said, the protests against this law were massive, and I actually can't believe that they didn't achieve more. It's kind of a very, very bad sign for Polish democracy. But that said, Barbra Nowacka did an amazing job, and she is still very, very involved in that. And if anything, her involvement in the centrist coalition is good in that she does push them slightly to the left on certain issues, taken a more kind of strong anti-abortion stance is definitely something that she brought into the coalition, which, you know, I have to respect. You know, yeah, sometimes, you know, change happens slowly, and that's okay.
And
It's a
now,
hot take.
Olivia, you have been saying many jokes,
I have been saying
but I
that.
think it's time you received a joke.
Oh, well,
This is like Christmas.
Oh, how the turntables.
Okay.
Okay, so this is for you, our Polish girl boss.
Yes.
So, my Polish grandmother used to dance in a ballet company. It was very awkward hearing her stories about pole dancing.
I very much
There
like
you
that.
go.
I very much like that. I do have a Polish joke that I actually didn't want to say on the
Oh, no,
podcast
go on.
when I was on it because, like, my mom was listening. And
Oh, of course,
you
of
know,
course.
I
Hi,
mean,
Mom.
I mean, she might listen to this on Spotify. Like,
Hi, Mom.
just skip
Mom.
this, but
Hey, Mom.
it's not even that bad.
Marta.
It's not even that bad, but I do think it's quite funny.
Alright.
So the joke is, what's long and hard? That a Polish woman receives on her wedding day.
What?
What?
A new surname.
Oh,
Feminism was a
wow.
mistake.
Because we do be having long surnames
That are hard to
that are
pronounce.
hard to pronounce. Yeah, there's nothing.
Nothing. Get your
questionable
minds
about
out of the gutter.
Exhibit A literally
Listeners.
like 12 to 15 minutes ago.
Yeah.
that. That's true. That's true.
What's the worst Polish surname?
Well, I always like to bring my granny into this because she has an amazing name, Bogusława Krzymińska.
That is an amazing name.
Legend.
Girl boss.
Yeah, as she should. But I'm sure we have worse ones.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyways, Poland's great. I do really love Poland.
Another day, another rendition of Polish propaganda.
In our last few minutes, shall we all shout out personal girl bosses in our lives?
Oh,
Okay,
that's so
let me
sweet.
think.
Oh,
I was going to, until you said personal, I was going to talk about Mary Shelley.
Not
Totally.
I respect that. You
Yes.
could have known her personally.
She's
I feel-
personal
I
to
feel
your
like I
heart.
To
know
your
her.
heart.
Yeah.
So we have Mary Shelley.
I'm gonna say my mom, who also has a cool name because her name is Marta Agnieszka Krzymińska-Borek. If you really wanted to get into
Wow.
it, yeah.
Legend.
She's definitely a girl boss, and she makes me more of a girl boss every day. So thanks, Mom. Sorry for the joke.
I will not apologize for the joke, but I will also be shouting out my girl boss mom, Carolyn Graham Townsend. We love you, girl boss mom.
Absolutely.
Is this just gonna be a mom appreciation?
This is
post?
just mom.
Because I was gonna say
Yeah.
my mom is
Yeah.
My mother is not Mary Shelley, but I will shout out. Mary Kenny.
Amazing.
my mom, Tuba Biret Artam Burkett. I love you. Another long name. We love to
Exactly,
say.
guys. Mothers, congratulations on having such amazing daughters.
Absolutely.
You did so well.
They're ultimate girl bosses because they are girl bosses, but they also boss girls around.
Yes.
Like us.
Yeah.
Much to think
Much to think
They
about
made us the
there.
girl bosses we are today.
Exactly. Carrying on tradition.
Of course.
Little tear
absolutely-
Little
down the
little
cheek.
feminist here.
Feminist tear of joy.
Alright. Yeah, absolutely. Should we put on another girl boss?
I
tune?
think we should put on
Absolutely.
our
Or we could talk about my other favourite girl boss.
No.
Sorry, no. I would just like to give a shout out to, of course, Margaret Thatcher.
the Iron Girl
For the
boss.
record,
No.
she is the Iron Girl boss, and we do
The
not
Iron
like
Girl
her.
boss.
Boo.
Yeah, that's,
All right.
that's such
On
a bad
that
note.
Ending on a horrible, horrible note there. Thanks for that.
You're welcome.
Thanks for
guys.
listening, guys.
And we will be
Or girls.
girls. Thanks for listening, girls.
Girls, gays, and theys.
Girls, gays, and theys.
and everything in between. We love you all.
This has been We Gals.
No problems!